We'll see. Hi, Udi. We are live. I'm just going to take a minute and make sure that everybody can see us and hear us. So anybody who's signed in and is watching us, can you just write, hi, we can see you? Okay, perfect. All right, so I think we're good to go. So hi, Udi. I'm so happy to have you here. Can everyone just tell me if you can hear us okay? Can somebody write, we can hear you? Udi, can you talk a little bit just so we can hear you?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, whatever it is for you, wherever you are.
Okay.
Can they hear me? Because I can't see comments for some reason.
No, it's okay. I can see the comments. Everyone says they can hear us fine. Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. Udi, we have a million questions for you today. I hope you're ready. I mean, I have been bombarded with questions for a naturopath. So we're live from Tel Aviv. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We have questions from all around the world. I want to just introduce Udi. So Udi is a naturopath. He's also a clinical herbalist and a touch therapist. And he's the founder of the Urban Shaman brand, which is a detoxification process. So Udi, can you just, start us out with a little, intro onto like why do you think a plant-based diet is the right diet? Talk to us about nightshades and versus the I don't even know how to say it, cruciferous vegetable, which, there's a lot of, discussion around which ones are the right ones to eat. Talk to us a little bit about gluten-free and dairy, and then we'll jump into the questions so that we, I know, I feel like it's going to be a long one. So let's start with plant-based diet.
Let's go ahead and do that. So plant-based diet, for those of you who are not familiar, is actually nourishing oneself with solely plants. So anything that grows on trees, land, also in the sea, but not anything that was live, basically, or that had a nervous system or a mother. So it's very similar to veganism in a way, like being on a vegan diet and a plant-based diet is pretty much the same title. It means the same thing. I think the main difference is that people who choose a vegan diet usually approach that diet from humanitarian reasons, which is all legit and amazing. Where people that are on a plant-based diet is the same kind of diet actually, but their goal or their predisposition is, I'm gonna nourish myself with a plant-based diet because I know this is what I'm first, not the animals first, like humans first, and this is the proper or the most accurate nutrition for our DNAs. And also it has good effects on our environment, on the oceans, on the lands. So, but what it means basically a vegan diet. You're not consuming anything from the animal kingdom. So it's
actually the same thing as vegan. It's just a different way of explaining why you're doing it.
Exactly. Like a plant-based milk is a vegan milk for that matter. Like you're not basically, like if we'll avoid, like, let's focus for a second on what we're consuming. We're consuming only plants and grains and legumes, and they all grow on the land, where on a vegan diet is the same. And like we're just not consuming any animal protein. That's the idea.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about, because the theme of the Sex Up Your Veg group is the power of veggies to restore our bodies unlike anything else that exists on this planet. Can you tell us a little bit about why veggies are so restorative and healing for our bodies?
Yeah, so obviously vegetables and fruits. Are you focusing only on vegetables or fruits and vegetables?
We love fruits too. We eat fruits in moderation. Veggies is the primary focus on our plates, and of course with fruits as well surrounding it. Yeah.
Very plant-based of you. So that's how you would do it. Basically, like the main ingredient on a plant-based diet are plants. So yeah, if we're focusing on vegetables, it's one subcategory of plants. Then we have grains, which are like quinoa or rice or amaranth, buckwheat, teff. Those are the grains family. And then you have the legumes, which are also plants, actually, and they grow. I tend to grow actually a few mung beans on my porch here. So those beans or lentils or chickpeas or fava, all the legume family, green beans and peas, yeah, those are also plants, and we call them the legume family, and those are high in protein, so they have a higher content of protein. So all of those are plants. But as for your question, why vegetables are or should be, or the main ingredient is um, basically because they're fibrous. Okay, they contain fibers, whether it's water soluble fibers or non-water soluble fibers. Those are that's why their health claims or their health benefits are as they are, because the fibers, basically, when we consume them, the non-soluble fibers basically run through our intestines like like something that clogs together and kind of walks down or drags everything down in your intestines and clears things up, right? So that's what's increasing our metabolism, basically. So that's the fibers are what's allowing us to clear our bowels. And to those of you who are not familiar with that, like, clearing our bowels is the most important thing for our health. For that matter, if we have American followers or participants in the United States, one of the highest ranking cancers, like the cancer that's taking the most toll, is colon cancer. And why is that? Because the standard American diet is mostly comprised with high saturated fats and processed foods and such, and it's minimalized, like very minimum amounts of vegetables or fibers. And then people are constipated, and then when they're constipated, their poop basically stays stuck in the colon, and those toxins are being released into the gut lining, and that's how certain cancers develop. So having a regular daily bowel movement is key, and this is where vegetables come into the picture. Other than fibers, obviously, they have antioxidants and vitamins and enzymes and minerals and phytochemicals and like all those nutrients that are essential, and then they're crucial for our health and existence. So this is why one would want to consume plants or vegetables in their diet. Yeah. So a plant-based diet, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's not enough to eat vegetables. Like, one can eat broccoli and Brussels sprouts and the cruciferous family that we'll mention, like what I've just mentioned, and kale and chard and spinach, and you can have leeks and zucchinis and all the vegetables that people will know, but that alone is not enough to sustain us on a plant-based diet, because we do need proteins. And basically each and every vegetable contains all those ingredients that we need, like fats, proteins, fibers, carbs, right? But to a certain amount. So in order to sustain ourselves on a plant-based diet, we need to make sure that we're consuming enough protein. Since we're not consuming animal protein, we need those 8 essential amino acids. For those of you who are not familiar, amino acids are the building blocks of what we call protein. Protein is combined from 20 different amino acids, most of which our bodies produce on its own. But 8 essential amino acids, they're essential because they're essential to our diet, because we cannot produce them on our own. So we do need to consume them from the plants. Now, which plants contain those amino acid? The legume family, which we've mentioned, are the lentils, the chickpeas, the beans, the fava. What happened here? Sorry. You need to consume the legumes. Plus, you want to combine nuts and seeds into your diet. Nuts and seeds would be pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, any nuts, like any walnuts, almonds, pistachios, yes, flax seeds, chia seeds, all those. So you want to combine those two. You don't necessarily have to combine them in the same meal, but you want to consume them around, all along the day. So your body basically dissolves the food into the certain to the amino acids that it needs, and then it creates a new building block of protein. Another option to create plant protein is to consume legumes, as we've mentioned, the lentils, the beans, that family, plus whole grains. Whole grains being brown rice, red rice, black rice, quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, teff. What else? Millet is like I've mentioned. Right now, I've mentioned the grains that are gluten-free, and we can talk about the gluten in a second. But so those are the whole grains that are actually also gluten-free grains. So combining those two, and if you look at indigenous cultures all over the world, let's say from South America, where they have rice and beans, or corn and beans, and in Africa they have teff and certain legumes, and in Asia they do also they have rice and soybeans, tofu, and in Eastern Europe they have the buckwheat and like peas or green beans. So every culture or community or indigenous community have their plant-based protein, and they consume it through the legumes and the grains, or the legumes and the nuts and seeds. So when on a plant-based diet, you want to consume your vegetables, but you want to make sure you're also consuming those certain plants that have those amino acids, so you can better sustain your body when you're on a plant-based diet. Go
ahead.
Okay. No, so this was about plant-based diet.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think, even for myself, like this group is really all about veggies and consuming, between 8 to 10 cups for women a day of veggies. We have people here who eat everything, plant-based and meat-based and, whatever else, whatever protein they want. We don't tell them what protein to eat. But I know myself, I'm very interested in leaning more towards a plant-based diet. And I always think that there's a lot of confusion around, how do you get your protein? So I think that was really interesting and gave us some really good value in terms of information for people and I think a lot of people in the group do want to move to a plant-based diet, or at least are interested in consuming more plants.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us? Yeah. So can you tell us the difference between nightshade and cruciferous vegetables? And I know there was one specific question: why do some people avoid veggies from the nightshade family, and what effect does it have on our health?
Great question. Okay, nightshade's family, just to name a few, are the tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers. Strawberries actually go into that family. It's kind of counterintuitive, because what does strawberry have to do with the
veggies?
But it is in that same family. Same goes for goji berries and for golden berries.
Yes, I am. I eat them. Yeah.
Right. So those are the nightshade family. They have a lot of health benefits, right? Let's not just put an X mark on them, because they do have a lot of health benefits. And we do know, like, tomatoes have lycopene, which is a powerful antioxidant. So that's a good thing. And actually, summertime, like for most of us right now, if you're choosing to avoid using sunscreens, but you do still want to kind of protect your skin from those UVA and UVB rays, for example, having a glass of a tomato juice can actually help your skin fight those rays, right? So like a Bloody Mary on the beach could be a good idea, actually, as a sunscreen, as an internal sunscreen. So they do have loads and plenty of benefits. But they also contain all those vegetables that I've mentioned that we call the nightshades. They also contain a compound that we call solanin. Okay, and that's in Hebrew we actually call the nightshade family the solaniim because they contain that solanin, right?
Ah, interesting.
And that's a compound that once consumed, it ignites an inflammatory effect in your body. So basically, the fact that we're introducing that compound, that solanin, into our diet, into our bodies are starting an inflammatory process. And inflammation, as most of you know or don't know, inflammation is a good thing, right? Inflammation is when our immune cells, right, attack a certain pathogen, something that entered our body, whether it's through the breath, through the skin, through the food or water, and we're now like our forces are jumping at that pathogen, and they create friction and heat and an inflammatory process, right? So same goes with solanin and the nightshades. So once consumed on a daily basis, we're actually introducing or promoting inflammation, or it's called the subacute inflammation because it's not like your house is on fire. It's like there's a little fire over there. So it's a subacute inflammation, and it's growing. And we'll touch the same topic in a second when we'll talk about gluten, because that's another subacute inflammation that we're having. So basically consumed every day. And for those of you who are familiar with the Middle East and Tel Aviv or Israel, the nightshades kind of tend to take over our diets as vegetables. Most of us consume plenty of vegetables here on a daily basis, regularly, just being outside and consuming like street food, right? Because there's tomato in every Israeli salad, and there's sabich, which is like an eggplant street food, and there's it's very common. Or peppers or strawberries. Those are foods that we consume pretty often. Or not to mention like potatoes. That's like a staple diet for every kid or anyone, basically. You eat your whatever steak or fish or lentils, and you'll have potatoes or French fries So we consume plenty of nightshades in our diets, and that actually leads to higher inflammation markers in our diet. And once we're inflamed, as I said, inflammation is a good thing, but if we have a lot of inflammation, our body is focused or concentrated in now reducing that inflammation. And that's not a good thing, because when we want our organs and our systems to be focused on whatever it is they're good at doing, or whatever it is they were designed to do, and not to be focused on taking out this fire in our house right now, right? So that's a good reason why we're avoiding nightshades. Now, who should avoid nightshades? People with chronic ailments, mostly. People with autoimmune disorders, right? So for example, I was born, I've been experiencing or suffering since childhood from atopic dermatitis. People refer to it as eczema sometimes, or it's a skin rash disorder that you just scratch yourself without having any control over why you're scratching yourself. And also rashes and like skin disorders, basically. So that's a chronic inflammation situation that you would want to avoid the nightshades when you're on such an experience.
So just to clarify, because many people might be experiencing, like you said, like they might have eczema, they might have an autoimmune disorder. So does that mean they should avoid eating nightshade vegetables 100%? Yeah. Wow, just cut them out.
I mean, not necessarily for your whole life. Right now, I'm consuming tomatoes here and there. It's just, first of all, you should stop consuming them for a while. Allow your body to
recover,
clear the inflammation, get better, get to a certain situation where you are on a remission with your ailment, and then you can reintroduce whatever it is you're missing. But again, not on a daily basis. Don't make it a staple in your diet. So yeah, that for sure. But also, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that extreme, like atopic dermatitis or eczema. It could be something as simple as migraines, or PMS for the
Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or breakouts, or UTIs, or many things that are somehow, many things that we're experiencing in our bodies that we tend to call them like, oh, that's nothing. Everyone has that, or like that doesn't affect me as much. It's not like cancer or something like chronic, God forbid.
Right.
So, people who are experiencing those minor aches, I'd recommend first eliminate these vegetables from your diet. See if it makes any changes at all. Allow the change properly. You want to allow your body to clean for at least 3 months, and then see if you want to reintroduce them. Yeah.
That is amazing. That's so interesting. I didn't know that. And I think that, a lot of people are suffering in the group from different things. And it could be as simple as just trying, starting out by eliminating these nightshade vegetables and see how your body's reacting. Okay. So
the cruciferous vegetables are on the other hand, are actually a great family of vegetables. And those are broccoli, and cabbage, and Brussels sprouts, kale, chard, bok choy, if you're familiar with that. I'm pretty sure.
Bok choy, yeah. Bok choy.
Dark leafy greens. Dark leafy green vegetables are your go-to when we're talking about cruciferous vegetables. And why they're so good is because they contain sulfur, and that helps your body eliminate toxins. So, for example, as you mentioned, I was running a business that would provide people with cleanse programs, like the actual food and juices. And the protocol after you're on a cleanse, because you've been cleansing your liver for a while after like a proper juice cleanse, and your liver continues doing that process even once you've done consuming the juices, you would want to consume plenty cruciferous vegetables, because the compounds in the cruciferous vegetables complete a certain detoxification process. So you do want to incorporate plenty of those vegetables into your diet. People who should actually avoid cruciferous vegetables, or make sure that at least they consume them slightly sautéed, not cooked, but like just breaking down a few of the like biological,
a little stir fry.
Exactly, but not don't like heat up the oil, and don't fry it, right? A little bit of water and like steamed vegetables basically, or slightly steamed. So people with certain autoimmune diseases also would much rather enjoy that, especially people with hypothyroid disorders. So that's when we were talking about cruciferous and nightshade. So those are the different families. But yes, you do definitely want to, when you're focusing on your what you said, 5 to 7 cups of veggies a day, right?
8 to 10. Yeah.
8 to 10, even better. Definitely focus on making half of that amount with those dark leafy greens. So make sure you have.
I always say that we're talking more dark leafy greens, and then adding in the other colors to that.
You got it.
So amazing. So, okay, let me ask you a question about gluten, because I myself have no idea whether I have an intolerance to gluten or not, but I feel that there's such a stigma around gluten that I just don't eat anything with gluten, because I think it's really bad for me. And ever since, I implemented these changes, like eating 8 to 10 cups of veg, eliminating gluten and dairy from my diet, I keep telling the group, I feel like I'm in my 20s. I fit into my prom dress from when I was 16 years old. And, there has to be something going on here with eating so much veggies and getting rid of these things like gluten and dairy. So tell us what's the deal with gluten. I'm really curious.
My favorite topic, actually. So I've been off gluten. I love gluten. I love anything that contains gluten. The smell gets me mad, especially here on the Tel Aviv streets. Like, you can't run away from the smell of like a baked goods or pita or something. It's all over the place. So
yeah,
our smell, the smell is connected to somewhere around our opiate, the opiate parts in our brain, and we're addicted. Basically, I'm addicted. I haven't touched gluten for over a decade, but I'm still addicted. Simple as that. So let's talk about gluten for a second. What is gluten? Let's go back to those essential amino acids and proteins. So gluten is actually a protein. It's a protein that we find in grains from the wheat family. And just to let's set it straight, like which grains go into that, under that umbrella of the family is so wheat, obviously, but then also spelt, rye, kamut, all those ancient grains, all ancient wheat grains, they still contain gluten, maybe less, but they still do. And anything wheat related that we're not necessarily connected to the wheat family. Like, I don't know if you're familiar in the Middle East, we're very familiar with couscous, right? That's wheat, just in a different form. Frike, I'm not sure if there's a different word for that in English, right?
I also don't know. Yeah, frika.
That's actually also wheat, but in a prior form. Soy like soy sauce, so it's from soybeans and salt and koji algae, but also usually has wheat inside the sauce. Okay,
so we use in this group tamari gluten free. That's our.
So you already took them to the next step of, like, not just vegetables but also gluten free.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, so now you'll
just whatever's worked for me, right? Like, I'm just telling people what works for me.
Yeah. So being gluten free will work for everyone. This is a consensus. Don't let anyone fool you. We do not need gluten to nourish ourselves, to sustain life on planet Earth. We do not need that protein. No. Actually, it's an interesting story how we were, as Yuval Noah Harari, this professor who wrote *Sapiens*. If you're familiar with him, he's portraying the story pretty nicely. When we were a hunter, hunter gatherers as a community back in the days, and then when we shifted to being like a community that are doing agriculture, it was because the wheat kind of took over us and like told us, hey, now you can grow the wheat here and we'll provide you with nutrition, but you will just allow us to sustain and to blossom and to proliferate, right? Because basically all the plants, they have the desire to increase and to grow and to spread out, right? Certain plants latch on to certain animals to pollinate, right? Each flower, each plant has its own way to pollinate, and basically wheat used humans to pollinate it. And basically the wheat is the fastest growing, or the most grown grain all over the world, because it took over our bodies. We're addicted to it. There's a whole way of research showing how it reacts with opiatic nodes in our brain and why we're addicted to it. But let's go back to like the basic biology. As I said, gluten is a protein. It's a protein that's combined from 7 different proteins. 2 of these proteins, actually 8, doesn't matter, but 2 of these proteins in the gluten building block, our bodies are not able to digest. Those are gliadin and glutamine. You don't have to remember that, but just know that there are 2 proteins that our bodies just don't recognize, right? Because for our bodies, for our gut microbiome to digest nutrients, we need to have, it's like there's a, like an ID, right? So the protein shows you like, hey, here's my ID, and now like okay, I know how to break you down, no problem. But glutamine and gliadin, we cannot. So they actually stay on our, imagine this is like your gut lining or like your intestines, right? So on the gut lining, those proteins stick and latch onto the edges. And basically they stay there, and then they interact with the gut lining, and they create this chemical biological process that basically the cells, the cells of our gut lining are glued together like it's called tight junctions, and those junctions open up because there's a chemical interaction with the glutamine and gliadin. And then those undigested proteins, I know it's a lot, but stay with me, those undigested proteins actually leave the gut lining into our bloodstream. And then we have undigested protein in our bloodstream. And remember what I said earlier about having pathogens in our system? The immune system will attack those undigested proteins because they're unidentified, right? It's like a terrorist attack in the cities of New York. Now you need to go and look for those terrorists and send the SWAT team to look for them. So
I love the way you explain this. It makes it like so much clearer to me about, like actually how bad this stuff is to be like ingesting. Like
seriously, very bad. And like why it's very bad is because if you're consuming a piece of bread, nothing will happen. That's what I said. Like there will be a subacute inflammation. The SWAT is now in Brooklyn and they're looking for the terrorist, and it's fine. But now when you're consuming the bread for breakfast and pasta for lunch and couscous for dinner, and then there's bread, gluten all over every day in the pastries, in the breads, and even in the healthier breads, right? In the pastas, like people consume gluten like on a daily basis all day, especially here. I'm not sure, I don't know where your group is from, but like in the Middle East, it's hard to avoid, right?
I think all around the world. Well, I mean, in the States, obviously, as well, and Australia, Europe.
In a modern diet, yes.
Yeah.
Because we cultivated it, and now we have so much of it, and we need to sell it.
It's like corn in the U.S.
Exactly.
The same story, yeah.
Same story, right. Very similar. Wow. Just corn is like higher sugar levels and like the corn syrup.
See, and what you're telling me, I didn't know. I thought that some people have an intolerance to gluten, and so if you don't and so you should stay away from it if you have an intolerance. And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't even know if I have an intolerance. I'm just cutting it out of my diet, and everything changed. Like my entire body just like reset. From
like everyone is intolerant to some extent, to some degree. People who we are referring to as gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance or celiac disease. There's celiac that's very clear. Like your markers, your body shows you cannot digest this. This creates this inflammation, and you're in a very bad state. But some people have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which is basically all of us. Right. The question is to what extent. But as I said, like we'll all experience that sub-inflammation, but if we'll consume it on a daily basis, we'll be very inflamed. And then inflammation is the best setup, is like the fertile ground to for disease, any disease.
Right.
For some they'd experience gas or bloating or diarrhea or constipation. Others will experience breakouts or problems in their skins. Others will have allergies, like seasonal allergies, but it's not so seasonal anymore. It's like summer, winter, spring, fall. It's all year round, right? Some people have tinnitus. Some people have PMS. Some people have migraines. Some people have staph, the staph eye. Some people have canker sores. There's
And
so
it can all be solved by just removing gluten from your diet. Like, and most of the question, not all, but that's like one thing to do, to try to see. So I'm gonna let's jump into dairy for a minute, and then we'll go and answer the questions, because we just have so much. But I mean, so much of what you've already talked about. People are asking, what do I do about bloating and inflammation? And like, you already answered the questions. Like, try getting rid of gluten, try getting rid of nightshade vegetables. Like, these are the things that are potentially inflaming and bloating you, and constipation as well. Okay, so let's get into dairy just for a quick minute. I personally don't consume dairy, except if I'm going out, in a restaurant. I might have some goat cheese on a salad. I don't make a big deal out of it. I know dairy is not good for me. I don't drink it at home. I don't drink it anywhere. I have almond milk. That's my replacement. And, once in a while, I don't mind having it out. What are your thoughts on dairy?
Okay, so dairy, another favorite topic of mine, basically is composed of lactose and casein. Casein is the protein, and lactose is the sugar of the dairy. So we have, when we're talking about sugars, we have sucrose, we have fructose, and we have lactose. So fructose is the sugars from fruits. Sucrose is like just the regular sugar, like the white sugar, right? That's 100% pure sucrose. And lactose is the sugar of dairy. And in order for our bodies to digest that lactose, as I mentioned earlier, the ID of each molecule. So lactose will show the ID to the enzymes in your body, and the enzyme that's called lactase will arrive and will break it down, which is great. Until here, everything's fine. The problem is that our bodies stop producing lactase, the enzyme, after around the age of 3. Why is that? Because we were nursing, or we were designed to be nursed by our mothers, if we could, right? I was not nursed, actually, but we were supposed to be consuming the dairy, or like our mother's milk, right? And we had the enzyme to digest that sugar. And then when we're around after the age of 3, we're not able to digest it anymore, and hence we're actually moving forward to eating different things that are not our mother's milk only, right? And then as a society, the modern society, we have cows and the cattle, and goats, and we started consuming dairy on a daily basis, like ongoing, even after we're 3 years old. And here's where the problems begin. Then again, we have this sugar that's being undigested because we don't have the key ingredients to dissolve it, or to digest it, or to make it, to shift it, right? So again, we're being overflowed with this sugar that's undigested, and that also creates an inflammatory process. Actually, even probably, I don't know which one is worse, but that's actually, I think most people consume more dairy than they consume gluten, but that creates a powerful inflammation in our bodies. And the people who are usually suffering mucus, nasal, sinus congested, like when the sinuses are congested, different sorts of like fungi related issues in their bodies, that's usually due to dairy.
And what about all the hormones that like are,
So yeah, that was the biological aspect of dairy, and then there's the whole aspect of the cultivation of dairy, and how there's a few aspects there. There's the aspect of like the health aspect, which is when you're growing cows in a farm, right? Since the livestock is living together very in proximity, they get ill pretty easily. So they have to be fed with plenty of medicine and antibiotics.
Yeah.
So those particles actually go into their milk, and then we consume that milk, right? And as you mentioned, hormones are being injected into the cows because they want to make their dairy like fatter, or more with more
just to produce more, like
also characteristics that will be more appealing to human consumptions, to our taste buds.
Interesting.
Yeah, and let's not to mention dairy, and this is like a very vegan, not plant-based, like a vegan claim. You would they would promote the fact that once the calf is born, it's being torn away from its mother, and basically the mother is being attached, like the what you call it. I don't have the word in English. Like when they attach the nipples.
Like the teat, I think they say.
Yeah. So when they attach those machines to their tits, they're actually making the cow produce more and more dairy, where it's supposed to go to her calf and it's not.
Yeah.
But basically, they're being raped out of their milk. Not to mention that they're being seeded, which also is kind of like a rape, to create a newborn. So it's very bad, actually. It's a bad situation. Like when you think about all the aspects of like the humanitarian aspect, the medical aspect, and like the biological aspect, like how it's being digested in our bodies, you are becoming more and more aware to the fact that this is not for human consumption. Like
I agree with you. I'm really, I mean, everything that you just said to me, like it just makes me feel bad. Like I want any part of it. Okay, let's jump right into the questions, because we've been already on for 40 minutes. So I really want to just answer some people's questions here, because they've been sitting on waiting for it. So, okay, bloating and inflammation, we already discussed it. Is there anything you want to add to trying to eliminate nightshades, gluten, and also dairy?
All those for sure. Try that. See if that creates any difference and changes in your bloating. But also, when we're talking about bloating, it could be caused by many different reasons. It could be caused by like an unbalanced gut bacteria, gut microbiome. So when the bad bugs are, that their community is bigger than the good bugs, so then you would want to consume more prebiotic fibers, which are garlic, onion, asparagus. Those have prebiotic fibers, and they will nourish the good bacteria. Also, fermented foods like sauerkraut, like kimchi, basically anything fermented, like what you call that, coconut fermented thing, kefir. So like fermented foods and prebiotic fibers will nourish your good gut microbiome and the good bacteria in your gut, and that might help reduce gas. Other reasons for gas could be an overgrowth of some sort of a fungal overgrowth. Like people are familiar with candida, but there are many other fungi related issues. So when we're nourishing our, for example, a candida overgrowth, when we're consuming a lot of sugar or alcohol or too many fruits or processed carbohydrates, we're nourishing that fungi in our gut, and that could and its byproduct would be certain toxins that will create gas, and then we'd find ourselves really gassy. So
let me flip it for a second, because there's not a lot of people in the group, but a few people in the group have said, I've started to eat 8 to 10 cups of veg a day, and I am bloated. What should we do in that case? Everyone is telling everyone to drink more water. There's a lot of water comments in the group, but from a naturopath,
I'd definitely look into which vegetables they're consuming. I can probably some people have sensitivities with cauliflower, and
Cabbage is another one, right?
cabbage, right? So cabbage, I would definitely ferment. As I said,
Okay.
like make sauerkraut, that would help. And then, as I mentioned earlier, try to saute or like slightly cook those vegetables. And also notice it's not necessarily due to the vegetables. It could be also because of what we were talking about, like the gluten or the dairy. So I'd recommend before you take out the vegetables, take those
Yeah,
out and
take
see if
those out.
that creates any change. But then if you're looking for means or like for ways to ease it, you can brew like a certain infusion or a tea that will contain plants that most people have in their gardens, maybe like sage is good, ginger, a few pieces
Yeah.
of ginger, and brew those and drink like a tea of ginger, maybe cold iced tea even during the day, but like with the infusion of ginger and sage and chamomile, could ease bloating for sure. Then also make sure you're having a bowel movement every day, at least once a day. That's key. So
So
that's
actually, let me jump in because I have one of the members who's asking. Okay, she is having a really big problem with constipation. She's eating loads of fruits and veg, but she just can't go to the bathroom. In this case, I believe she's also on medication, but I can't tell you which one. I don't know. Any suggestions for her?
yeah. I mean, there are certain medications that cause constipation. Even supplements like iron sometimes can
Yeah.
cause constipation. Actually, even consuming chia seeds that are really great for us if we're not consuming enough water, we can experience constipation.
Right.
So for constipation, what I'd recommend is actually before you go to bed, take a tablespoon of flax seeds, whole flax seeds, not grinded, mix them in half a cup of water, and gulp it, like shoot it up, shoot it. Don't try to chew on it, just like shoot it
Just shoot
and
it up.
drink it. Yeah, those fibers and water throughout the night will send you straight to the toilet, hopefully.
Amazing. Yeah.
And if that doesn't help, if you have an aloe vera plant, you can fillet, like use the gel that's inside of the leaf, or buy a leaf in the grocery store, and blend that in a blender with water or with apple juice, whatever you like. Drink that. That's also a laxative, so that would help.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, great tips on going to the bathroom, guys.
Oh,
Amazing.
another important tip. I don't know how.
Go for it.
Usually-
She's here. She's listening. She's writing it down. Tablespoon of flax seeds in water. She's going to try it tonight.
Okay. So I don't know how, when you're sitting in the toilet, I tend to do this. I'm not sure if you can see. Like that.
Yeah. Where you're leaning. Exactly.
Not
Always
good.
on the phone.
How
How do you want it?
So two options. First one, literally sit on the bath.
Wow.
You can do this. This actually, the Squatty Potties commercial? It works. Or just use some sort of a stool, where are we here, to lift, to put your feet on top. So
I never tried that. Yeah.
this should be your position. This way the sphincters are released and we're not applying pressure, and the bowel movement should be cleared out easily.
When I was pregnant, I had such bad constipation. I remember I was like this. I was like giving birth on the toilet. I would sit like this. It helped amazing. But I mean, the pain, of it coming out it was like giving birth every time I went to the toilet.
But, because you have a baby and that crust is on your intestine, that makes it, difficult. But for any, I actually sit on the toilet like that every day, just because, or use a Squatty Potty. That would help too.
This is such great tips, guys. I mean, this is like amazing stuff. Okay, Let's jump into here. Yes, I have a stool. I like the idea of sitting on top of a toilet. Thank you, Udi and Jordana. Amazing. Okay, so people are getting value here. So let's jump in. We talked about raw versus cooked. You were saying that it's always kind of a little bit better to just touch on that a little bit more. Like, can we eat our veggies raw? Should they always be a little bit sauteed, or do we need to just feel it out?
So as I mentioned, cruciferous vegetables, the kale, the cabbage, the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, ideally slightly sauteed.
Okay.
Just because you want to break in the dark leafy greens, there's it's called oxalic acid, so you want to break down those chains with the heat. So that's good. And then all the other leafy greens like arugula, lettuce, baby mix, parsley, cilantro, those the thinner ones, the ones that are like
the
grass.
herbs.
Yeah. So you can just consume them raw. Other option for the cruciferous, if you don't want to saute them, you can actually marinate them in a little bit of lemon juice, and that's also great, like a ceviche kind of an option. So ideally slightly cooked, and then the raw vegetables like cucumbers, carrots, those can be consumed raw, no problem. But like root vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, ideally slightly
sauteed a little bit,
cooked, oven. That would just ease digestion for you. But yes, ideally you can consume everything raw. But if you're experiencing some sort of a gassy situation, try having it mostly slightly cooked.
Okay, amazing. So we did touch on like foods to avoid with autoimmune disease, inflammation. Another question was chronic fatigue syndrome. So what foods should people in general avoid with these types of issues?
Right. Let me just touch again on the topic of autoimmune. Yes, we've talked about what to avoid, which is sugar, processed sugar, carbohydrates that are not whole grains, like even white rice or everything we've mentioned around the wheat family. And then again, gluten, dairy, and then you would that's what to avoid. But you do want to consume plenty of high quality fats, which are avocados and walnuts, coconuts, olives, olive oil, extra virgin, like 0.3 acidity, organic, cold pressed. Fats, chia seeds, they have high, they're nutrient dense, especially with omega-3 fatty acids, which is what you need, the fats you need to decrease inflammation markers. So chia puddings, for example, is a great idea for breakfast for those of you who experience any autoimmunity. And then you were asking about
chronic fatigue syndrome.
Right. So for chronic fatigue syndrome, there are so many different options for why one is experiencing chronic fatigue. It could be caused by EBV virus, Epstein-Barr virus. Could be caused because of certain food sensitivity. So if you would take allergens off your diet, allergens, that family being peanuts, sesame, soy, dairy, we've talked about, gluten, we've talked about. Those are peanuts I've mentioned. Those are the most common allergens. So if you're experiencing chronic fatigue syndromes, avoid go on a hypoallergenic diet. So take off the allergens and then see if you're experiencing any difference. Also take a test to see if you have one of those viruses that might be affecting you. And then also gluten is the first thing that I would take when feeling chronic fatigued, and also all the stimulants. So coffee is off, cacao, I'd take off sugar, obviously, alcohol, those things. If you're experiencing chronic fatigue, take those off and then go on a hypoallergenic diet. You would feel better, I think, I hope. And make sure you're getting adequate sleep also, like
Right,
it's,
of course.
but
Yeah, that would be number one.
number one. But most people that have chronic fatigue, obviously, they would say like, I'm sleeping 8 hours a night and waking up and I'm dead. I'm tired. So
I know that for myself, I used to wake up feeling like that. And as soon as I started to eat 8 to 10 cups of veg a day, I wake up at 5 a.m. before everybody else. And I'm able to wake up naturally. Like the amount of energy that I get just from consuming so many vegetables has really changed, the way that I feel during the day and my ability to wake up in the morning.
yeah.
Okay, so let's find a few more questions. How do we go vegan without eating too many legumes? That
Right.
was one of the questions.
It's a good question. It's almost impossible because you would want to. It's really challenging because you would, as I mentioned, you'd want your amino acids, and the legumes contain most of it. If the person asking that, I'm assuming they're sensitive to legumes, and that makes them gassy and bloated. So what I'd recommend is to always soak the legumes for overnight and then sprout them, begin the process of the sprouting when they kind of sprout out this tail. That would make them A, more nutrient dense, B, easier on digestion because of the lectins. That's another compound that's in the legumes that will wreak havoc on our gut. And so it's easier to digest sprouted legumes. And if you're not into legumes, try the easier ones to digest, which are mostly yellow and orange red lentils, mung beans, green beans like string beans, peas, snow peas. Those are legumes too that are actually easier for most people to digest. Sprouted chickpeas, soak them overnight and leave it in a sieve and rinse it every few hours until it begins the sproutation, and then cook it. Make sure you're cooking your legumes properly, so that would ease on digestion. And then soy, like tofu, if you're like non-GMO organic tofu, it's easier.
Can I ask you a question about soy, just to stop you for a second? Because I used to consume soy milk like, I could go through like a whole bottle a day by myself. And then I heard that soy milk, and this was like a few years ago, even more, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And then I heard soy milk is like actually not really good for you in large amounts. And I moved to almond milk. What's the deal with soy? Like, can we be drinking soy milk in large amounts or no?
Ideally, no. Nothing should be consumed in large amounts. Imagine, always go back to the idea, what if I was or remember yourself as a hunter-gatherer that your ancestors were. And no, you won't be consuming soy milk. It's ridiculous. You won't be. It's just the process of producing it is so challenging. So consuming it on in high amounts doesn't make any sense. But soy specifically is the legume itself is highly genetically modified, and also overgrown all over the world, because nowadays the majority of consumption of soy, the beans, are for the meat industry. So that's being most of the cattle that's being raised for human consumption is being fed with soy. And soy, so that's why it was genetically modified, because they want to make sure that their crops are not ruined because of a pest or whatnot. And also, soy contains a compound called phytoestrogen. So that actually creates estrogen, like the female hormone, and that would
estrogen,
that would help your body produce higher levels of estrogen. And for women, for young women especially, you don't want to start igniting that the process of adulthood for a young girl that's consuming. Nowadays you can see how young females are starting to produce like their sexual organs um, in
Earlier.
an earlier age because they're
Yeah.
consuming either soy milk or or animal protein that was fed with a lot of soy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And what about tofu, by the way?
So tofu is so that's what I was saying. Like if you're avoiding soy milk and you're avoiding dairy and you do want to go on a plant-based diet, and you can find like the cleanest possible tofu, like a non-GMO, organic, and incorporating that into your diet like once a week, you're good. It's not like you're consuming it every day. And that's an easier way to have protein in your diet. But I think the easier proteins for people who are not into legumes, those would be peas,
Okay.
spirulina,
Mhm.
those are good, quinoa. Those would be alternatives for protein that are not legumes.
Got it. Okay, amazing. I love it. This is such great advice. Last question. Balancing hormones during postpartum. Any thoughts on that?
Um, so yeah, first avoid soy, as we mentioned. Um, Balancing the hormones. I would recommend high levels of omega-3s and iron, especially postpartum, is key. So
Okay.
we're talking about chia seeds, coconut, walnuts, avocados, olives, right? Um, Iron, all of the dark leafy green vegetables, some nuts and seeds, and legumes. And yeah, mostly I would actually focus on for women that just gave birth. I would focus on nourishing themselves in a way that would be most nutritious for their babies. And then if we are consuming those legumes, make sure they're sprouted, so that would ease digestion, and make sure you are drinking certain herbs that would ease both your hormonal level and your baby's. To name a few, one of the best ones is actually is Vitex, Vitex. Um, that's a powerful hormone balancer herb that you can consume. It looks like little pods, and you can brew them and make a big pot of tea from that, and just consume that during the day for a while. That would be
Right.
a really good hormone balancer. That's a part for your nutrition, and that would be also good for the female body and for the baby, and for the actually for producing even higher quality breast milk. Like so,
Got it.
Vitamin is good, and Angelica is another good herb for that. Nettle, which is easy to find in every garden, but also you can just buy the dried nettle. So making a tea out of those three could be a good idea postpartum. And as I said, consuming omega-3s, fats, um, sprouted legumes.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
All right. I think that's more than enough. I think there's a big shopping list now for one of the ladies in the group to go find. Okay. I'm going to throw them quick at you because they keep coming. What's the best natural milk you recommend?
Homemade almond milk.
Perfect. Done. And what we have big fans of Urban Shaman here asking, Udi, when are you going to open up another Urban Shaman? It was my favorite place in Tel Aviv. What do you say? Will you open up another one for us?
I mean, I would love to. It's just like seriously, the two months without an income, and prior January, February, which was winter, and like income was lower than usual. It just wreaked havoc. It's like financially impossible for me right now to do that. I'm in such a big mess. Like the financially, having a business in Tel Aviv is one of the most challenging things financially. So right now, it won't be smart. It's like it's irresponsible. It's economically irresponsible of me to open up a new place right now. Um, if something will come along and I'd find a place where there's like super cheap rent and it makes sense with traffic, but it doesn't make sense to have a restaurant, especially like if you're on your own and there's not a big group of people that are
like investors.
Investors, and also like operationally on hands-on. It's super challenging, but I'm receiving messages all the time, and it warms my heart to know that okay, I did something really good. People liked it. And
people loved it. All right, guys, everyone listening and everyone who's going to watch later, we interviewed yesterday Orion Healing Center in Thailand, and we were talking about how we're going to, plan a retreat there as soon as the borders open. So in the meantime, anybody who needs a naturopath, Udi's here. Can you tell us, what types of things you do? Like if somebody wants to come to you for a detox, how can they reach you? What are you offering the people in this group so they know what they can contact you for?
Basically, anything you're experiencing that you have a desire or willing to change through natural medicine, which could be your nutrition, your like changing some aspects of your lifestyle, implementing different herbal herbs into your diet, whether it's like tinctures or pills, but made from plants, or taking supplements. I'm helping people, from that woman that wants to lose 2 kilos and wants to shift her diet to chronic disease and people with cancer. You can support them with natural healing modalities. So basically anything that you feel called, like you need someone's advice and to kind of guide you through to your healing process naturally.
If somebody wants to build like a detox plan with you, they can come to you for that as well, right?
For sure. That's easy.
Amazing. Udi, thank you so much. Can you just go into the live at the end? You know what? You're not a member of the group because it's a women's only group. So send me by WhatsApp your best contact details, website, and everything, and I'll link it to the page so that anybody who wants to can reach out to you.
The easiest way would be like Instagram. It's Udi, UDI, _ Sahar, SAHAR. I'll send it to you.
Send it to me and I'll link it to the group.
I'll give you my contact if somebody wants to reach out on WhatsApp, and we'll set up a time to Zoom.
Amazing. Udi, everyone so much. You have no idea. People have been waiting for this live for weeks. They really wanted to have. Yeah, they had so many questions, and this information is not readily accessible. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we will we'll see you soon, and we'll hopefully see you around Tel Aviv.
Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay sane. Thank you for having me.
It was such a pleasure. All right. Ciao, everybody. Bye, Udi. Bye-bye.